edition of the Draft Dynasty Podcast. My name is Jeremy Betz, and I am joined this week by a duo of dynamic draft analysts here on the show. It is DDP regular Andrew Wilbar back for kind of a summer, middle of summer cameo role, if you will. Andrew, welcome back to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm looking so forward to being back on for just a short time to have a little break in our travels. So I'm excited that I was able to hop on. Thank you all for having me again.
Absolutely. And then Archie Wilson joining us from New Zealand. How's it going, Archie? It's mid-afternoon for you while we're recording this, and late night for us, but we're getting it done, man. How you doing?
Yeah, going well. Looking forward to another episode on here with you, Bits, and first time with Andrew, so that'll be good. Close to the weekend now, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I am here at my parents' house this week on vacation, so I'm in some different, a little bit different setup. So, and Andrew's on the road traveling. So, if there are technical glitches, we apologize ahead of time. But we're gonna have some fun on this show. We're gonna talk about maybe the most intriguing conversation that we can have about the NFL. It's quarterbacks, and we're going to do it from a draft perspective because we've been hitting a lot of fantasy football on this show, but I figured if Andrew could join us tonight, it would be really fun to kind of tackle a way too early look at some of these 2026 quarterback prospects that are going to be coming out in the draft. And I think kind of the best way to do this to start out is not even just hit the players, but let's go to the NFL. Let's go to some of the situations across the league that are going to be interesting for the quarterbacks. All three of us are Steelers fans, so obviously right off the bat, that team comes across to us as pretty obviously going to be in the running for a quarterback in 2026. The draft also happens to be in Pittsburgh. They're going to be the talk, really, of that draft based on how they've set themselves up draft capital-wise, the fact that it's going to be on location in Pittsburgh, the fact that this quarterback class is projected to be so deep, especially with the top end of the class where it looks like you can have a year very similar to the 2024 group where it's just a really good-looking group of guys. 5 or 6 quarterbacks could go in the first round. So let's just dive into this. What other teams maybe sit on this precipice of probably going to need a quarterback going into the 2026 draft? Andrew, we'll start with you.
A couple teams that I'm looking at that could be on the fence, the Rams. We talk about all the homework that they did on this past year's class, what happens with Matthew Stafford long-term in L.A. as he's getting older. You've got the Raiders and their situation. I know that they're in this kind of quick rebuild process with Pete Carroll, and I know that he's not going to be the long-term answer there, nor will Geno Smith be at quarterback, but you've got to think they're going to be looking at it. I think a team like the Dolphins could be interesting depending on Tua's health this year. You have a lot of teams like the Colts as well. What happens with Anthony Richardson? This is what's going to determine what the Steelers and other teams in picking probably in the back half of the first round is going to determine how easily they can get up to get one of those quarterbacks. Those 4 teams right there, you're going to have the automatics like the Browns unless Shador hits or unless Dylan Gabriel hits. You know they're going to be up there. There's several teams like that you can almost guarantee you're going to be picking right near the top. The Saints could very well be looking at it if Shuck doesn't prove something in year 1. But those 4 teams that I mentioned a minute ago are what are going to determine most likely how readily available the potential first-round prospects at the quarterback position will be for teams with a winning record. Because more than likely, if those teams have losing records, they're going to be looking at quarterbacks, and that's going to dry up the market.
Yeah, I look at the Rams and Steelers as being in pretty similar situations, except the Rams have a second first-round pick already in the 2026 draft to work with. The Pittsburgh Steelers do not. They've got 12 total picks, and obviously they can pull from 2027. But if you're looking at a team that's going to be in a similar spot draft-wise, if everything goes according to their plans and the Steelers' plans, late 20s probably, mid to late 20s as far as draft slots, if both teams have the type of seasons that I think inside the organization they believe that they can. And then you've got Cleveland, who you mentioned there, Andrew, who also has 2 first-round picks set aside for 2026. So This teams in the back half of the draft are going to have their work cut out for them if they're going to try to battle up for these players. But the saving grace might just be that there are so many quarterbacks available that it might be just one for everybody, and then it's jockeying for which one you want. Archie, are there any other teams that fall into this category of maybe going to be quarterback needy by the time the draft rolls around?
Yeah, I was just thinking because I think Andrew covered those off pretty well. So I think those are all the clear-cut kind of potential locations that could need a quarterback. The only other one I could kind of think of could be the Giants, especially if they have a change of head coach, GM down the line. It could be the fact that Jackson Dart was the last regime's guy, and potentially a new head coach and a new GM would like to pick their guy for the future, especially if they're near the top of the draft and they see a more talented guy. But that's the only other name I could come up with there.
Andrew, did you mention the Jets when you were talking? I may have missed that.
I did not. They're obviously
Okay.
a potential team. I'm a big believer in Fields. I think
Sure.
that he's going to be the guy. But again, another one of those teams that could be, if it doesn't work out, they're not committed to him financially long term. There's not a ton of guaranteed money there, especially for the quarterback position. That's definitely another team in that mix.
Yeah, I wanted to bring them up because I think that they're very clearly intriguing as a potential, and that's just because Fields is making $20 million per year for the next two seasons, so that doesn't prohibit you from drafting a guy next offseason if you're in position to do so. Not many people think the Jets are going to be that good. If they do come into a world where they're a top 10 drafting team, just how the season goes, then they might be inclined to go ahead and take a swing on a guy, especially if it's one of those seasons for Fields where it's like, oh man, we can still see some of the potential, but it just doesn't all come together. And I think they would have to see like a bona fide star turn for Justin Fields in 2025 for them to not draft a quarterback or not be in that mix, I guess, for 2026. So I think that they're an important team to mention. I love the mention of the Colts. I think they're definitely going to be in that mix. And I don't know. Some team will sneak into the conversation probably, and then some team will probably have something figured out. So things will always change, and that kind of leads us into then who's going to be available, the quarterbacks that are going to come out. Andrew, if you're looking at your way too early big board of quarterbacks here and rankings, who's your QB1 in the 2026 draft as we sit here today before a snap of college football season has been played this year?
Well, if Arch Manning declares, he would be the number one guy. I'm starting to get the sense that he's not going to come out this year. That's just from what I've been hearing. It seems like he's going to do the 4-year plan as his family seems to desire. But one guy that I just really like his game as a whole is Lenore Sellers from South Carolina. The way that he plays the game can be a little reckless at times, but his creativity on the fly, his ability to withstand hits inside the pocket, and his escapability. And he's not just a run-first guy. There's a lot of things he needs to learn in terms of going through his progressions quicker. But what we saw from him this past season is that he doesn't immediately look to run if his first option isn't open. He may not be the quickest getting to that second read, and he may buy himself a little more time in college that he won't be able to buy in the NFL by just running around recklessly with the football. But
Right.
He's keeping his eyes downfield while he's doing that. He's shown a little bit more patience inside the pocket. And I think if we see that same development this year, I mean, you're talking a guy with traits off the charts. You're talking about a guy who could potentially be a Josh Allen level type guy, or is he going to be an Anthony Richardson who we're sitting here in year 3 and is like, is this guy going to be in the league 2 years from now? We don't know. But he's got all the talent in the world. Right now, I would say he would grade out similarly to what we thought Joe Milton was mid-season this past year. Of course, that ended up changing as time went along. But Joe Milton falls to the 3rd round, which is great value. You're looking at Norris as a first-round pick, so he's got to prove something more this year in terms of getting there. But I love the traits. I love the heart. I love the will. All of that together, he's my QB1 because he's the guy that has that upside to be that true franchise guy, that true difference maker.
Archie, your namesake, Arch Manning, very astute there. I think that the Arch Manning like hype is going to be something that we're going to track all year, and how he performs in Texas this season is going to kind of determine a lot, right? And how Texas performs. If they go out and win a national championship, does that change the conversation on the four-year starter in college type thing that the family wants for him, or that type of scenario, or is he just gonna come out then in that scenario? And then also, I guess if Arch Manning does not come out, who would be your QB1 if we're looking at it right now?
Yes, I think with Arch, he's obviously a supreme talent. He's got all the tools in the world. But the scary thing is so far he's just such a small sample size. I think he's got something like 90 collegiate throws in his career. So it's hard to tell exactly what he is right now. But from all things that we can account, he's basically what you want in a franchise quarterback coming out of college. In terms of if Texas win, I'm not 100% sure how much that'll change the Manning's plan for Arch, because as Andrew kind of said, a lot of the smoke right now is for Arch returning back to school and kind of following the path that some of his family members did previously. So I think more likely we're going to see Arch return, but yeah, potentially if he can kind of go on a Heisman run, get a national championship, maybe you might see him think, well, I've done everything I need to here in college. Could take a step forward. In terms of my QB1, I'm also on the Lenora Sellers hype train, so I'll go a bit of a different route though. I'll talk about Fernando Mendoza, transfer to Indiana. He's 6'5", tall, lanky frame, and he's just got a hell of an arm. Like, he's able to hit any throw at any layer of the field, and he's also really precise, which is awesome to see. I just think this upcoming season, when we see him move to the Big Ten, we'll see him against some better competition rather than where he was playing at Cal earlier. But I think he's another guy with a lot of tools. He's got the prerequisite kind of athletic profile as well for what you need in the NFL. So another interesting name there to start off the season.
Yeah, I like both of the guys you're mentioning here, and maybe the two of the most athletic quarterbacks in the draft here between those two guys. And Sellers is just so like unbelievably explosive and slippery in the pocket, and he's so big too. It just doesn't make sense how a guy as big as he is, 250 pounds maybe. I mean, he's a big dude out there rumbling, and when he gets going, you better watch out, right? But he can throw the ball, and he plays with good anticipation at times as well. Andrew, I think you're right. If the first read's not there, he does struggle getting to that second read with quickness, but he's not just looking to pull it down and run with it first thing if the first thing he sees isn't there. So and then with Mendoza, I think you're right, Archie. We need to see him in a better offense. We need to see him in the Big Ten or against better competition, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. Not even on a good team necessarily. Indiana's going to be intriguing this year, but I don't think they're a playoff contender necessarily. He's just very intriguing when it comes to the potential there, the measurables. I think the other guy that I'm really looking at, just kind of my style quarterback, is Drew Aller out of Penn State. Big body, big frame, some of the athletic traits, kind of just like the raw natural arm talent that you see from him is very fun to watch. Very inconsistent is what I've seen out of him. And I think that you're going to need to see a lot more consistency this year for him to jump into that true blue-collar top 10 pick at quarterback for 2026. But I just think that he's a guy with all the traits that you could ask for. Can he put it all together? That would be, I'm not saying he's my QB1 right now, but I would say that he's the other guy that I'm really, really intrigued by. Guys like Cade Klubnik, 6'2", 210 pounds, he's right on that threshold for me where it's like, that's bare minimum for what you're looking for in a QB size, in my opinion, for a guy who like, if he's got everything else, you want the size to be there for him to be maybe able to be that elite type quarterback. But, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is 6'2", I think. He may be 6'3". Andrew, you probably know that, being the Patrick
6'2".
Mahomes. 6'2", okay. So he's not a big guy either. But Klubnik has a good arm, and he's got a lot of mobility and athleticism as well. So I think he is, I can't remember who it is. It may be Jordan, no. I can't remember who it is right now, but he's somebody's QB1 that I follow on X that's a pretty big proponent of the quarterback class for next year. So I think that he gets a lot of smoke. Any other names here that we just want to mention real quick as excuse me, maybe fighting for the opportunity to earn the QB1 status for 2026, Andrew?
I'll mention Sam Leavitt from Arizona State. And the way he played this past year, I know he's kind of close to that threshold as well. Not the biggest guy, but if you want a guy who's got a really good arm, above average arm, I think it can get stronger this year. It can become that elite arm. He's got great poise inside the pocket, and you watched him even going to that game, I believe it was against Texas. They weren't able to pull that game off. But seeing some of the decisions that he made, being able to layer the ball to every level of the field, and being able to anticipate receivers open, that's a key part in the maturity of a quarterback. And most of these guys in this draft, they don't have that. And Levitt's another guy who could return to school. I mean, I think he still has 2 extra years of eligibility after this year if he wanted to go back for those. So I can't guarantee that he'll enter if he can get money by staying in college. But, man, this guy is much more mature than most when it comes to processing and anticipating a receiver open at the break of the route and knowing where to place the ball. That's a key element that I really like about his game.
I like that too. I haven't watched much of his tape yet, but when I get into it, that's the kind of things I'm going to be looking for, is like his ability to process, because the size just isn't there for me. So he's going to have to be a quick processor in the backfield, in the pocket, to be able to be a workable option, in my opinion. But he is very intriguing. Archie, did you have anybody else you wanted to bring up here in this conversation?
I think just quickly, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU.
Yeah.
He had a good first year as a starter. He obviously had big shoes to fill with Jaden Daniels being the QB before him. And I think he's just a really smart quarterback. He's a bit of a gunslinger. Nothing too elite about the tools that he has, but he seems pretty mechanically proficient, I'd say, from lower to upper body. He's relatively accurate, and like Andrew said, in terms of throwing with anticipation, that's one of the things that Nussmeier does so well. So he's another guy. I don't know if he can get to that QB1 spot just because of the lack of high-end tools, but he's another guy that'll be in and around the middle of the first round, potentially.
I like it. And I agree with you, too. Again, physical tools, not necessarily a guy that you look at and you say, oh, man, franchise quarterback prototype here. But the arm talent, the ability to process, he's intriguing as well. So, again, the point of this is really to kind of get an idea for who's going to be in this conversation. And when you just look at it from a kind of 30,000-foot viewpoint here, there's potentially, we just talked about 6 guys here that are pretty clearly going to be in the first-round conversation. So when we come back from the break, I want to dive into that little bit of the conversation a little bit more, like who else might work their way into the first-round conversation. Are there any sneaky guys that we need to be looking at here in this? And then we'll look at some team fits as well. So stay tuned. The second half of the Draft Dynasty Podcast will be back right after this. And welcome back to the second half of the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Jeremy Betz, Andrew Wilbar, Archie Wilson here. We are breaking it down, the 2026 quarterback class here. Just kind of a way too early preview of the group. And again, it's a very intriguing group. It's a group that's going to be the talk of the NFL this coming off season, and probably at certain points throughout this season as well, as we see which teams are just kind of falling apart, right, and are going to be in the quarterback conversation right away. And then how a team like the Steelers does, how a team like the Rams do when it comes to, are their quarterback situations going to be desperate by the end of the year? So we'll see how all that plays out. But going through some of these prospects, we talked about Arch Manning, we talked about Lenore Sellers, let's see here, Fernando Mendoza, Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier. Andrew, I wanted to ask you about Carson Beck. At one point, this is a guy that we thought was going to be pretty clearly a first-round type quarterback if he kind of put the last couple things together. It didn't really work out, and now he's got one more year. He's going down to Miami to try to give himself one last chance to jump into that category. Could he sneak into the first-round conversation at quarterback? Is he already there, maybe, in your opinion? And maybe anybody else that you think could sneak into that conversation.
Beck is a tough one because this past year, I did not like Carson Beck. We talked about him a lot during the draft process until he decided to return to school, and throughout the entire college season, we had debated Carson Beck. He's got the tools, but man, every game that you watched, you always wanted more. And he had that stretch where he just was turning the ball over so much and making bad decisions, bad mental decisions. He got into his head. I think it was a good decision for him to transfer to Miami. He's going to get better coaching there, I believe, that's more dedicated to the quarterback. It's going to be not a perfectly pro-style offense, but more pro-style, I think, than some of the aspects that he was in at Georgia. I think when it comes to ball placement, he is better than what people give him credit for. He can fit it into tight windows. But just like we were talking about with Levitt, with the anticipation, being able to anticipate receivers open, he can't at this point. When a receiver makes a cut, especially going against zone coverage, he does not mature in reading where the defender's going, especially in underneath coverage. If it's a linebacker that's maybe on a delayed drop into coverage, or you've got maybe a nickel corner who's maybe double, kind of going into further out coverage toward the sideline, in more of like a cover 3 type package, he is not good at reading those underneath guys, and he'll try to just throw it in there, zap it in there real quick, but with not enough air on it, those things are going to get picked at the next level. He's gotten away with a few of them in college, but those things aren't going to happen in the NFL. His footwork still needs a lot of work, and again, just the mobility factor. He has mobility, but it's not elite like some of these other guys.
Archie, your take on some of the other guys that might sneak into the first-round conversation?
Yeah, so I think another interesting name, he has a transfer this year, and that's John Mateer, Oklahoma, transferred from Washington State. I watched a bit of him when I was watching Kyle Williams in this last draft process, and I think once again, he's a little bit undersized, being 6'1", a hair over 210 potentially, but he's just another guy that he's very aggressive. He's got good arm talent. He's a pretty solid athlete, and you see him making plays out of structure often. I think the other thing about him that kind of endears him to a lot of fans is his toughness. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Baker Mayfield in that sense, which could be interesting, obviously playing for Oklahoma again this year. So once again, he's another one that's probably got to work on a few things and polish his game in terms of decision making, a bit from the technical aspect, but I think he's another name that could certainly surprise a few people, especially on a lot bigger stage playing for Oklahoma this year.
I think it's very interesting how a lot of these quarterback prospects end up in spots where it's like these schools have a type at quarterback that they like, and Mateer in Oklahoma just makes sense, especially with Baker, with Kyler, some of those other guys that have played for Oklahoma. I think like Carson Beck at his best, a Cam Ward style quarterback makes sense, and now he's down in Miami, and that just kind of feels right, I don't know about, some of the, like the Garrett Nussmeiers in LSU. That's kind of a departure from Jaden Daniels, which, Jaden Daniels was a transfer to LSU as well. So that some schools just kind of get guys in, but Nussmeier, I guess, is more Burrow-like in his approach to how he wants to play. So some of these stylistic approaches from schools and the types of quarterbacks they bring in, that's very interesting to me. So I like that you bring in Mateer into the conversation here. I don't know if there's anybody else I would say oh wow, if he has a great season, he's probably going to bump himself into the first round category. There's some intriguing traits, guys, down the line. I think of is it Arkansas's quarterback this year? Taylon Green, is that is he playing for Arkansas this year? 6'6", like 240. He's a big dude as well. He's got a massive arm, and I'm interested to see what he does. But I don't think he's like pushing into the first round conversation this next year. But there's some intriguing guys further down the list, and as we get a little closer down to the college football season starting, and more draft talk at that point, we can bring up some guys. Andrew, did you have somebody you want to talk about real quick?
Well, I thought you would probably mention him just because there was so much drama surrounding it, and that's Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously transferring out. I don't know what's going to happen with that situation. He's going to have some rough questions he's going to have to answer in the pre-draft process regardless. But we saw the traits that he had before this whole situation came up with Tennessee and them wanting more money and whatnot. We were talking about him as a first-round pick. That 6'6" frame, he's got a great delivery. He can run with it. He's a talented quarterback. Yeah. And I think if it weren't for this situation, we're looking at him as a first-round pick. And now all of a sudden he's off most people's draft boards. I don't know that I would want my team to draft him in the first round, but if he has the type of season that I think he's capable of having at UCLA or wherever he's playing this year, I mean, it's going to be hard to pass on him because the talent is the one thing that the NFL will not overlook, and it will oversee any shortcoming, sometimes even with character we've seen before. So I like him as a potential sleeper for the first round. Another name I'm going to mention, the size is, I know you're not going to like the size, he's 6'1", 205, but Miller Moss, who was initially at USC, he's now at Louisville. You watch him in the bowl game from 2 years ago when everyone else had decided, hey, I'm not playing. I believe that was the year Caleb Williams was the quarterback. He wasn't going to play in the bowl game. So Miller Moss got a chance to, and he lit it up in that bowl game. And you watch a little bit of his tape. He knows when to take off and run. He's got good mobility. Maybe not an elite arm, but he's got a great release. He releases the ball so quickly, and it's very difficult to tell where he is going as the play unfolds. He's very deceptive, which is something that I like. It's an intriguing trait of his. I would say he's probably I probably have a third, fourth round grade on him right now, just projection. But if he, in the right system, we saw what Tyler Shuck did this past year. If he can have that similar season, I don't see why he can't go in the same range that Shuck did.
Gotcha. He's somebody I'll have to hit some more tape on for sure. I think that as we get closer, obviously I'll be getting into as college football starts and they're actually playing games. The season of is when I get more into the tape of some of these guys. Andrew, you're way ahead of me on that regard, and that's just how it goes. But Archie, I wanted to get your opinion here next. If you had to take, and we'll go through maybe a couple rounds of this, but if you had to take one team that's probably going to need a quarterback next year and one prospect, and you had to pick the perfect pairing here, Archie, what do you think? Who are you going with for maybe a perfect pair for 2026 quarterback to team?
Man, I think potentially in terms of the Rams, you could see kind of Sean McVay looking for the game manager type, someone that can run a system very well. And I think that's where you could see someone like a Garrett Nussmeier go, especially if potentially the Rams will most likely be at the end of the first round. So I think that could be somewhere where Nussmeier could go to, and I think that's potentially someone that McVay could get the most out of.
Okay. I like that one. Andrew, you got one?
Yeah, that's a really good one with the Rams. I like that one. I'm going to take the Colts, since I was talking about them earlier, and I really want Anthony Richardson to succeed. I'm really hoping that he can make it there. But if things go south, I really do like Drew Aller's fit with the Colts. Okay. I think that he would make a lot of sense in their system as more of a prototypical pocket passer, more in the mold of, honestly, an Andrew Luck type player. That if his career would have gone a little bit longer, who knows where the Colts would be as a franchise right now? It could be in a lot different spot. So I like him. Another guy that could be a fit, for a team like the Rams or even Seattle. We didn't mention Seattle, but if Sun doesn't
Yeah.
go well with Darnold and Jalen Milroe doesn't show any signs of progression, I think Cade Klubnik could be an interesting fit there as well under Mike McDonald.
Yeah. I was going to put Drew Aller with the Steelers just because of the size and the style of play. It just makes sense for a team like Pittsburgh. But, I mean, I like Sellers there too. If Sellers were to be available when the Steelers could get to, I don't know, though. I've got a feeling that by the end of this, Sellers might be the first overall pick the draft. So you're going to have to – and whoever's got the first overall pick, if that's Cleveland, they're probably taking, the quarterback. So you're not getting to number 1 overall probably, even if you're trading, especially if you're trading from the 20s. You're just not getting to number 1 overall. So I like that one. I'm curious, Archie, if you got another one, another team to player fit.
Yeah, I'm just having a look. If Andrew has another one, he can go now. I'm just trying to see who else I could pair up.
Well, I like Archie's comp for Baker Mayfield and John Mateer. I'm not going to put him to Tampa Bay, but if you think about maybe Baker's former spot, if you think of Cleveland, if maybe they're not picking quite as high, or there's just this player that emerges out of nowhere at another position of need for the Browns, and maybe they want to give Shador another shot but bring in a different type of competition. They realize Kenny's not the guy. Joe Flacco retires, and Dylan Gabriel's not really showing anything, or maybe Gabriel's showing something and Shador's gone. In any of those scenarios, and they just want to bring in competition. I don't think that the scenario will happen, but I do think Mateer would be an interesting fit with Cleveland, considering they've had the Baker experience before, but they got rid of him before things got really good. So this would give them another chance to maybe redeem themselves there. And I'll mention Sam Levitt to the Raiders, that you have that same West Coast type offense that Levitt's already been running in college. I think that would be an ideal fit as well, and I think Pete Carroll would love a guy like Levitt.
Archie, got anything?
Yeah, I was just about to go with Sam Levitt to Cleveland as well, just because he's kind of that tough, gritty quarterback that makes plays for his side, out of structure. He's kind of just like a winner, if you get what I mean. Like he just produces plays, and I think we saw that down the stretch through the college playoffs. He was carrying his team with Cam Scatterbo, basically. So I think Cleveland has tend to had a kind of affiliation with those kind of quarterbacks that are kind of the heartbeat of the team, or especially in terms of like selecting Baker. I think if Sam Levitt has a big year, he could be a name that Cleveland might be looking towards.
The other one I wanted to bring up is just because the Jets are going to be in this conversation, I think, and they always seem to make the wrong decision, or like a questionable decision, right? Like one that's like, okay, maybe you go with Zach Wilson because he had one really good year, and some of the off-platform stuff looks really cool. But I mean, this was BYU, and this was not great competition, and we just need to see more of it. He's not a big kid, It's like, what are we doing here? The Jets to me could be the Nico Iamaleava team. Andrew, don't laugh at me, man. I'm trying. They could be that team, right? That kind of reaches on a guy with some traits that's a little bit questionable. But I think the better fit is Fernando Mendoza to the Jets. I think that would be interesting because of the size, the vision, and then some of the athleticism. Like if the Jets aren't sold on Justin Fields, right, and they're like, you know what, we really need a guy who's a better pocket passer, who can handle some of the pocket reads and stuff like that, but also give us some scrambling ability, or even some design run ability. I think Mendoza can do some of that. So I think that he would be a good fit with the Jets. Yeah, so I think this class is going to be very intriguing as we get even closer to it. And obviously some of these guys are going to separate themselves. I don't want to say that, it's already like a historic draft class for or an all-time type draft class for quarterbacks, but you're looking at 6 or 7 guys that have first-round potential. Like, this could be a really good year. And if some of these quarterbacks work out for other teams, say Shedeur Sanders just comes out and says, you know what, I know you guys waited to draft me until the 5th round because of my family issues or whatever, and some of my attitude problems, but he's got that fixed or whatever, and he actually goes out and balls out for Cleveland, they could be off the quarterback market, and they're going to be picking early. The Jets could be totally off the quarterback market if Justin Fields plays really well, and then you're going to see him get a bigger extension on his contract for the next season. There's a couple teams here. Maybe the Colts, maybe Daniel Jones has kind of a Sam Darnold or Geno Smith resurrection in his career, or Anthony Richardson does work out, and that team's off the board. So I think, as a Steelers fan, in a lot of these cases, right, if you're a Steelers team, or if you're a Rams team, and the Rams should have their eye in the NFC on getting to an NFC championship and maybe a Super Bowl because of the lack of depth on the NFC side overall. If they are picking 26th again next year, they need to be hoping for a lot of these other quarterbacks to work out. A lot of these guys that have been invested in by other teams that maybe you're just trying to get one more shot out of them. If those types of things work out, there could be a lot fewer teams QB hunting in 2026 than there are prospects, and then you're going to have teams probably getting good value in the middle of the first round on a guy that you thought maybe gets pushed into the top 10 if there's 5 teams in the first 10 picks that need quarterbacks instead of 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Any final thoughts, Andrew, on the quarterbacks before we get out of here?
Well, I think either way, regardless of whether some of these quarterbacks that we talked about, they declare or not, I think if any one of these end up going into 2027, you're going to have 2 really solid quarterback classes in a row. And in 2027, not only do you have the strong quarterback class, but you have a strong receiving class to go with it. And there's some good receivers in this draft. But in 2027, you're talking about Jeremiah Smith. You're talking about Williams from Alabama. You're talking about some premier guys that have a chance to take the league by storm from day one. So 2026 draft, way better than 2025. Not even in the same book, just from top to bottom. It's going to be deeper. It's going to be better than this class that, in my opinion, was not good at all. And then 2027 could be even better than that. We are in place for 2 really good draft classes in a row, and it's going to be led by the quarterback position.
I think teams are going to look smart that passed on the quarterback class last year, or in 2025, when they get to 2026 and they're actually selecting quarterbacks. So teams like the Browns aren't going to look too smart for taking 2 of those guys in 2025, even at the value, I guess, that they got them at. Archie, any final thoughts from you as well?
Yeah, I just think the exciting part is that, as you kind of mentioned, Betts, there's 7 first-round talent quarterbacks that we can kind of already identify. But the exciting part is through the process, you get some names that we don't even think about right now come through. I mean, Joe Burrow, obviously, is just an extreme example. So there's already that level of 7 that's like the foundation of the class. But then there's going to be a few names come through. I don't know if it's feasible this year, but Dante Moore could be an interesting name from Oregon, getting his first year as a starter. But just names like that people aren't necessarily talking about right now that could end up being a top 3 quarterback in the class when it all's said and done. Yeah. So there's a lot of room for potential, I think, for the class, which makes it very exciting.
Yeah, and going back to Andrew's point, too, if some of those guys step up this year and they end up not going in this class, they end up going back to school, 2027 looks really good as well. So we're in for a good 2-year stretch of quarterbacks, and I think if teams play their cards right, we could be looking at a really loaded NFL quarterback room for all 32 teams, really, by the time 2027 rolls around, and I'll be interested to kind of track that overall as well and see who rises and falls. But Andrew, it was great to have you on for a one-hitter here in the summer as you finish out your traveling tour and everything. So keep us posted on your availability. And Archie, always good to have you on the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Really appreciate you jumping in and being a part of the show. So thanks to all the listeners. Keep following us at Steel Curtain Network, or Fans for Sports Network here, and the Steel Curtain Network if you're a Steelers fan. And I appreciate that you guys continue to consume our product. We've got a lot for you coming out over the next few weeks as training camps get started around the NFL, and we've got more fantasy football stuff to talk about as well. That's going to do it for us here on the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Keep drafting, everybody.